Chapter 40. At breakfast Brazil was the topic, and all endeavoured to take a hopeful view of Clare's proposed experiment with that country's soil, notwithstanding the discouraging reports of some farm labourers who had immigrated thither and returned home within the 12 months. After breakfast Clare went into the little town to wind up such trifling matters as he was concerned with there, and to get from the local bank all the money he possessed. On his way back he encountered Miss Mercy Chant by the church, from whose walls she seemed to be a sort of emanation. She was carrying an armful of Bibles for her class, and such was her view of life that events which produced heartaches in others wrought beatific smiles upon her. An enviable result, although in the opinion of Angel it was obtained by a curiously unnatural sacrifice of humanity to mysticism. She had learnt that he was about to leave England, and observed what an excellent and promising scheme it seemed to be. "Yes, it is a likely scheme enough, in a commercial sense, no doubt," he replied. "But, my dear Mercy, it snaps the continuity of existence. Perhaps a cloister would be preferable." "A cloister? Oh, Angel Clare!" "Well?" "Why, you wicked man, a cloister implies a monk, and a monk Roman Catholicism, and Roman Catholicism sin, and sin damnation. Thou art in a parlous state, Angel Clare." "I glory in my Protestantism," she said severely. Then Clare, thrown by sheer misery into one of the demoniacal moods in which a man does despite to his true principles, called her close to him and fiendishly whispered in her ear the most heterodox ideas he could think of. His momentary laughter at the horror which appeared on her fair face ceased when it merged in pain and anxiety for his welfare. "Dear Mercy," he said, "you must forgive me. I think I am going crazy." She thought that he was, and thus the interview ended, and Clare re-entered the vicarage. With the local banker he deposited the jewels till happier days should arise. He also paid into the bank £30, to be sent to Tess in a few months, as she might require, and wrote to her at her parents' home in Blackmore Vale to inform her of what he had done. This amount, with the sum he had already placed in her hands, about £50, he hoped would be amply sufficient for her wants just at present, particularly as in an emergency she had been directed to apply to his father. He deemed it best not to put his parents into communication with her by informing them of her address, and, being unaware of what had really happened to estrange the two, neither his father nor his mother suggested he should do so. During the day he left the parsonage, for what he had to complete he wished to get done quickly. As the last duty before leaving this part of England, it was necessary for him to call at the Wellbridge farmhouse, in which he had spent with Tess the first 3 days of their marriage, the trifle of rent having to be paid, the key given up of the rooms they had occupied, and 2 or 3 small articles fetched away that they had left behind. It was under this roof that the deepest shadow ever thrown upon his life has stretched its gloom over him. Yet when he unlocked the door of the sitting-room and looked into it, the memory which returned first upon him was that of their happy arrival on a similar afternoon, the fresh sense of sharing a habitation conjointly, the first meal together, the chatting by the fire with joined hands. The farmer and his wife were in the fields at the moment of his visit, and Clare was in the rooms alone for some time. Inwardly swollen with a renewal of sentiments that he had not quite reckoned with, he went upstairs to her chamber, which had never been his. The bed was smooth as she had made it with her own hands on the morning of leaving. The mistletoe hung under the tester just as he had placed it. Having been there 3 or 4 weeks, it was turning colour. The leaves and berries were wrinkled. Angel took it down and crushed it into the grate. Standing there, he, for the first time, doubted whether his course in this conjuncture had been a wise, much less a generous one. But had he not been cruelly blinded? In the incoherent multitude of his emotions he knelt down at the bedside, wet-eyed. "Oh, Tess, if you had only told me sooner, I would have forgiven you," he mourned. Hearing a footstep below, he rose and went to the top of the stairs. At the bottom of the flight he saw a woman standing, and on her turning up her face recognized the pale, dark-eyed Izz Hewitt. "Mr. Clare," she said, "I've called to see you and Mrs. Clare, and to inquire if ye be well. I thought ye might be back here again." This was a girl whose secret he had guessed, but who had not yet guessed his. An honest girl who loved him, one who would have made as good or nearly as good a practical farmer's wife as Tess. "I'm here alone," he said. "We are not living here now." Explaining why he had come, he asked, "Which way are you going home, Izz?" "I've no home at Talbothays Dairy now, sir," she said. "Why's that?" Izz looked down. "It was so dismal there that I left. I'm staying out this way." She pointed in a contrary direction, the direction in which he was journeying. "Well, are you going there now? I can take you if you wish for a lift." Her olive complexion grew richer in hue. "Thank ye, Mr. Clare," she said. He soon found the farmer, and settled the account for his rent and the few other items which had to be considered by reason of the sudden abandonment of the lodging. On Clare's return to his horse and gig, Izz jumped up beside him. "I'm going to leave England, Izz," he said as they drove on. "Going to Brazil." "And do Mrs. Clare like the notion of such a journey?" she asked. "She is not going at present. Say for a year or so. I'm going out to reconnoitre, to see what life there is like." They sped along eastward for some considerable distance, Izz making no observation. "How are the others?" he inquired. "How is Retty?" "She was in a sort of nervous state when I zid her last, and so thin and hollow-cheeked that I do seem in decline. Nobody will ever fall in love with her any more," said Izz absently.